subscribers. It's me, your boy. It's your boy again. Back with another episode. How do you like my look today, scriber? My rambunctious look. You know, to me it's all about the look. I'm a fashionista. I'm a relentless critic of art and culture and fashion and dress sense. Alright, if you want to be in my circle, if you want to be in my inner circle, my inner sanctum, then you gotta make sure your fashion sense is on point. You know, I'm talking about, you know, sneakers, Jordans. You know, if homeboy pulls up, you know, he's gonna like get it. What are we reflecting upon today in the episode? So last time we were on the show, we were speaking a little bit about the dichotomy of thought, the sides of thought. Now, I think that video went well. It started out being very revolutionary, but then began to allow some doubts, which I think would make it a useful springboard for a philosophical debate. Now, the thing about sides is that, you know, there's two sides to every story. You've heard that expression, right? But the thing is exactly that. The idea of sides is just another story, which means that, you know, if I want to use sun side versus moon side as a prism of historical analysis, then that is also a type of, you know, a type of intellectualism. And all intellectualism is you know, moon side. So, insofar as I am here trying to create a heuristic for trying to distinguish between the sides of history, you know, kind of like the way it's conceptualized in the Bhagavad Gita, the holy text of the Hindus. I myself am engaging in activities which I myself have declared as sort of inferior by virtue of my own philosophy, which is interesting. So there's not really much more to be said on that. But I just thought my hair looked so fucking enchanting today that I had to make another one of these selfie videos, basically. Because I have to put myself into the mood to want to, you know, speak and interact in the world. And so my daily mirror exercise, my daily verbal shadow boxing, if you will, it's a very helpful little trick. I would recommend everyone who's watching the show to start doing the same. See how far they can get into their own psyche, and see if they can get back out. You know, a whole lifetime of tripping. You ready for that? You ready to trip on your entire essence, on your entire being? It's quite the arduous journey. Yeah. arduous journey. But we've made it all the way here. I've made it all the way here in this project, which I didn't necessarily expect to be able to do. But then again, I'm one of these people who plan my life 1 second at a time. So, don't come to me for advice on how to schedule your day, or the optimal way to structure your work week. Because I can't really give anyone recipes for that. But I have ventured far into my own essence and tripped on my own essence, which is the thing I was referring to as philosophical jankum. The philosophical jankum. Which is the most powerful drug. That's the most powerful drug ever devised. Yeah. The strongest, most potent form. Guys, in the comment section, should I now buzz cut my hair off, or should I keep growing it until it becomes like a luscious mane, like a lion? When I look like a lion, then everyone is going to have to get out of my way and give me way. Make way, make way. The lion is coming. And I am a lion. Yeah, leave a comment. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you think about. Think about. Tell me what you think about that. What other subjects are there to cover then? Sides. Yeah, so sides of the story, sides of the history. The good guys and the bad guys. The commies and the Nazis. The Axis and the Allies. Who's who? The importance of being honest. Perhaps. Oh yeah, I was just going to remind everyone. That in order for sides to exist, alright? In order for sides to exist, you have to have a unity. Which means that any sided thing is not its sides. It's the thing which possesses sides. But these sides are attributes of a substantial thing. Meaning that the confusion that happens when we discuss history through the lens of sides, we ascribe substantial existence to the sides instead of the thing. But that doesn't make sense when we look back to, for instance, a coin. You wouldn't take one side of the coin and the other side of the coin and say that they are two different things, because they're the same thing. You can't have one without the other. That would be absurd. A one-sided coin. That doesn't make any sense. And so this is what people need to think about when they talk about the good guys and the bad guys, or gender, or black and white. on a chessboard. That's as close as you can get to a one-sided coin. But even that has to be asymmetrical in order to work. So you can see how the initial asymmetry of the chess game is what causes it to begin at all. Similarly, the asymmetry of the sides of coins is what causes flipping heads and tails to be a thing. And like I said in the previous video, the dance between masculine and feminine is what causes the dance of life to start at all. Which means that the debate of feminism is basically a good old-fashioned who started it. Which is pretty fucking funny, because everybody wants to talk about how they're grown up. I remember in kindergarten, that was when I was at my most misogynistic. But that was when we were broing out the most across the gender boundary. Because we would say stuff like guys are best, and they'd be like, no, girls are best. But then the grown-up version of that is actually quite ugly. It's quite ugly. And who started it, right? Was it the guys who started it? Or is it just the masculine trait to not care of being accused of having started it? Like, why isn't there a masculinist party, It's because when the feminists reach and accuse us of having started it, we just go, all right, that's cool. That's actually a flex. That's actually a feather in our cap. The boys, we started it. But of course, if you accuse women of having started it, it's like the fucking end of the world, right? Unless they're like those diabolical feminists who are like, yes, we are like Satan, and you must slay us, for we are dragons. Which is, that's kind of a cool way to be, but, it usually doesn't lead anywhere because their defenses are way too high up. So it's like, what the fuck? You only get off on conversation finessing? Y'all 3 or 4s need a reality check. I'm speaking on. Speak all. But of course you can't actually have the discussion who started it, because men and women aren't as real as people. So when you ask who, the answer to that question is people, not men or women, because that's not a who. Like, you can't point to the abstract men. That's the big problem in the gender debate. It used to be that a man was a line of ink on a paper in a draft ledger. A man used to be an X on a fucking tax record or a church book. Maybe with a symbol that signifies that he's a man, if it's a book that contains both men and women. And now, what is a man? A social security number with what is it? Do they put M for male on the birth certificate or something? F for female. And those letters are just dependent on how you say those words in your particular language. And so it's like, okay, so that's what you can point to. People's birth certificates. But you're still just pointing to people. It's like pointing out someone's nose, you go into their birth certificate and it's like, yeah, M. There you go. Fucking man. But it's like, that's just like a tiny percentage of the information contained on that piece of paper. And that piece of paper is like just a parody of 1% of your essence. I mean, it's as basic as possible because it doesn't have any business in your internal soul life. So this idea of defining the characteristics of men and defining the characteristics of women as a sort of set of characteristics is very much just a leisurely garden party conversation gone out of hand. You can imagine a ball in the 1800s at the estate, and the colonel is speaking of the good men. Yes, the good men that help him win the battle. Strong men, but gentle. And then, he'd be rambling on there for 30 minutes, and then his disgruntled daughter, who is having some sort of love triangle situation, and her mother is a screeching bitch who wants her to marry some guy that she doesn't want to marry. She decides to chime in to this monologue of the colonel's and begins speaking of women in a combative way. But this is nothing to do with the actual subject of men and women, but she wishes to catch the eye of the party and make the colonel look like a buffoon, while at the same time testing her two lovers to see which one is more keen. And so she chimes in, well, there are no great men without great women, And then the discussion spreads like wildfire in the dry grass. And that's the origin of that whole thing. I guess it probably didn't happen specifically at the location which I described, which is merely a hypothetical scenario to make it easier for you. But it is just the fallout of dinner party drama, which are conversations that aren't really about these great universal topics at all, but just about the dynamics of a group of people at a given place. The problem is that this type of culture became so insular and passed down that by the time that we reach nowadays, you got people getting paid to write papers and add to that debate, even though it's not substantial. It's just the ramblings of old successful men and young horny women put up against each other, juxtaposed one another. And that's just it, It's the self-satisfied memoirs of the retired general versus, Daddy's little angel going crazy at the wine reception in order to try to attract a strong mate. And that's just about it, That's all that feminism really is. And a lot of other shit as well. A lot of other politics. A lot of other talking about politics is that. But at dinner parties is always going to end up with guys against the girls. So this gender angle is, it's a well tried dinner conversation angle. Of course, among normal people, that topic can be discussed and then laughed off within 20 minutes. But among extremely resentful people, it becomes a festering obsession within their hearts. And it becomes a defining characteristic of their identity and how they decide to structure their life and interact with people. And that's, that's kind of defining as well of like the Dostoevsky-esque pre-revolutionary Russian nobility thing, where you have all these like overschooled rich kids that run around and have clandestine night meetings after their lavish dinner parties, and sort of jump from ideological obsession to ideological obsession as a kind of nihilistic pastime. And that certainly is the condition of a lot of ideological gaming, ideological discourse. And what is it about? Is it about creating an impression of being schooled? Or is it about creating an impression of being powerful? Of being like the potential leader of the revolution? Or is it simply the impulse to try and impress your father, which has just remained stuck inside of you and fires at autopilot? Fires on autopilot. Look at this gorgeous thing. It's gorgeous, mate. It's bloody gorgeous. So I think when you think about the historicity of discourses, just like the philosophers in the 20th century pointed out, that philosophical endeavors of the late modern time were mainly going to be concerned with creating critiques of the historical development of given discourses in order to deconstruct. But what a lot of these theoretical endeavors fail to take into account is precisely that discourses happen IRL. So to simply study the Pokemon cards of all the concepts used really intensely is not really sufficient in order to create a realistic timeline of how this stuff evolves. Which is why, for instance, taking inspiration from Nietzsche is important, because he essentially observes that thing I described with an example on a macro scale, which is that human culture evolves from theater, or from performing, and that individuals evolve out of masses. And that characters emerge from the choir. and so he kind of like draws the lines of European culture back to the Greek city-state and its love of theater. Of course, that could be said to be the genealogy of all quote-unquote high culture, which is Europe's big export to the world, and such obsessing around ideologies and the sides, the eternal idea war, is similarly entrenched in quote-unquote high culture and the European experience. and essentially every SJW talking point evolves from a Gogol play in some mansion somewhere, where they've managed to gather together some important people who are far too rich and far too worldly to be able to have grounded discussions. And that's how that whole mill keeps evolving. But all of the formulations are comically sort of unable to recognize that its perspective is hugely just influenced by good old wealth, which is, I guess, a Marxist angle, and an angle that would be presented at this theater at the dinner party, probably by a Dostoevsky-esque character, maybe a Kafka-esque character. Yes, the slim intellectual with the black trench coat, sitting at the corner of the table, and he hasn't said much yet. But now, when the silence falls, it is time for him to chime in with his silver bullet argument, which will make him irresistible to Elisabetta Ivanovna, sitting at the other side of the table. But of course she is so obsessive and scarlet that she would rather see him dead than in the arms of another. And their bedroom conversations came to be defining for a whole generation of young middle-class revolutionaries. Because that's what plays are, just like templates for games you can play in life before you die, so that you don't have to be so bored that you go crazy and murderous, like Nicholson in The Shining. You can spread it out with some interesting talks and some moral dilemmas until you're there, banging your heads against the wall and flipping heads and tails just to make the seconds pass. Yes. I think it was with good reason that they called it Russian roulette. Their icy indifference in the face of a brutal reality. That is what you need to win at the casino. And what can you win? A bullet in the head. Yes. As good old Barry I would know. Guys, leave a like, comment, subscribe on this video. We're gonna do more political commentary and ideas in the coming time on the channel. And yeah, welcome to Norway. Hope you have a really great